All right. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I see we have a few familiar faces and some people I haven't met yet. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicholas Carroll. I'm an instructor with TCC Workforce Development's Applied Cybersecurity program. Joining me on the stage today as well are Christopher Peacock, who is one of our students in our first cohort, as well as a couple more of our instructors.
Kyle Kelly.
Andreas Casey.
So, thank you so much for joining us. I was just told about the app. Apparently there's a code for it. So if you want to enter the code for our session, it's called The Cyber. I don't know if you can read that well, but it does say The Cyber. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the security challenges that are currently facing our industry in 2017 and going forward. Spoiler alert, it's mostly the same things we've been talking about the past few years. They're just getting worse. So that's kind of fun. We have, since I'm here, I'm going to take a minute just to steal the show and talk about the program that we're representing right now. The Applied Cybersecurity program is an evening program for adults who would like to come after their jobs and learn about our field and get some hands-on experience. It's essentially a full year program. You come in the evenings, 6 to 10 p.m., Monday through Friday, for 750 classroom hours. We try to include a lot of labs and hands-on time. We work with Splunk, Nessus, VMware, a lot of the in-demand technologies. So if anybody's looking to get into the field, please come see us. We've got handouts out of the front here. We just got some general handouts about IT cybersecurity as well. If you'd like to grab one, feel free. That's my sales pitch, so we're going to move on. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. Number one, we're going to talk about phishing and social engineering. This is the number one weakness in every organization at this point in time. Social engineering, it's our users. They fall for it every time, unfortunately. I know a lot of people have been talking about how good their training program is getting and how their policies are getting better. Unfortunately, we're getting outclassed and outpaced. So we need to kind of step that up a little bit. Social engineering, this is a great little SMBC comic that I love. When people talk about hacking, they think about what hackers do. They often think about the movie stuff, which is a lot of jargon and everything like that. But in reality, they're going to call a tech support line, impersonate you on the phone, and try to start stealing your information. That's the way it really works for most of these attacks. Because they're effective, they're easy. They don't take a lot of computer power or anything like that. I can just have my cell phone on my junky laptop and start calling around and phishing for things. And on phishing in particular, this is the most common attack type that we see at all. 77+% of attacks right now in the wild are phishing attacks. That's it. This is where it's all coming from. The majority of our mail traffic nowadays is spam and phishing attacks. Mail filters help us out a lot, but they don't do everything. 85% of organizations have reported that they've been targeted by phishing attacks, and there's been about a 22% rise in spear phishing over the past year. So it's not just, blanket little statements now where you get these junky little emails that everybody will not fall for anymore. They're really putting the effort in now to make it look like it came from inside your organization with spoofing techniques. They're really putting the effort in now to trick your users. And to be honest, the mail level that we're seeing has kind of leveled out, right? We're at a plateau for the amount of traffic that we're seeing. But social media phishing has exploded. In Q4 2016, there was a 500% uptick in social media phishing attacks. And they're very effective because once they compromise one account, they start posing as that person to all the other users that person is connected to, and it just spreads like wildfire. So when you're thinking about in your organization what kind of policies you're writing and what you're allowing, you really need to be thinking about your social media use policy, both for what you're putting out for marketing and what you're allowing users to do day-to-day at their workstations. This is one of my favorites, absolute favorite statistic in the entire thing that I'm going to bring up here. So in a recent Frederick Alexander University study, 78% of the participating users said that they knew it was a bad idea to click on unknown links. They did it anyway. They don't care. Our training programs, as good as we want them to be, we're not stopping people because we're not showing them the consequences, right? I can write a good policy and I can say, don't click that link even though it looks like it's from Amazon. Don't click that link even though it looks like it's from UPS. They're still going to do it because it looks good. It's that nice candy and they're going to go for it. Policy writing is good, but it's not enough. We have to make sure that we're checking that our users are following our guidelines. And that involves testing our users on the regular. All right? So there's a few good, easy ways you can do that for testing, for phishing especially. Phishing as a service is now a thing. And before we even had it on the good side, the criminals had it. What I've got up here is actually a screenshot from Fake Game, which was a Russian phishing as a service platform that they had out there for just anybody to start phishing and faking Facebook and Gmail. And they even linked it so that if you ran a successful phishing campaign, you could easily sell those credentials on the black market. They just had it all tied up into one nice little thing. They even provided pretty dashboards and customer support for as low as $350 a month. Yeah, the criminals got it better first. That's terrible. So there are, if you want to do this in a more legal fashion, there are some services now available that have been out for the past couple of years. They're starting to grow in popularity. Fish5 is very common. Their tagline is that you can be up and running in about 5 minutes. Sophos, if you have them as an antivirus, their Sophos Central now has a fish threat product that you can purchase. There's FishMe, which is an excellent platform, and there's some other ones out there. But what if your budget doesn't allow you to purchase an add-on like this? Because these things can run $3 to $5 per user per month or per year or whatever their subscription model is. And I know everybody, sometimes we get into those budget crunches, and that's okay, right? There are some open source utilities that you can use to do the same thing. And I'm going to bring up one right now. GoFish is really easy to set up. It's open source. You can run it on Windows or you can run it on Linux. It's got pretty dashboards and nice reports. It has the ability for, if you have a user who clicks through, it will not only log that happened, but you can have it set up to automatically redirect the user to a site of your choice. So you can redirect them to an internal training site or, an external video on phishing or whatever you want. That's a nice feature, and it's open source and free. I'm not going to go into how to set this up right now because we only have a short period of time. I don't know what everybody's level is. But if you would like information on how to set up GoFish, I do have a PDF that I have prepared. It's got a lot of nice screenshots, all the commands and everything you could possibly need. Just get with me afterwards. I'll give you, I'll get your contact information. I'll give that to you just fine. Here's, there's one of the pretty dashboards and everything in GoFish. How nice is that? Look at that. It's free. So no excuses. Please test your users if it is allowable in your organization. Okay? And one of the big reasons that we need to be testing our users is because of the rise of ransomware. Right? That's the one that keeps everybody up at night at this point in time. It's getting a little nuts. We just had WannaCry this past week. I bet you that kept a lot of people busy in our industry. I know it made a lot of people freak out, and for good reason. This one was a nightmare, or at least it could have been, and it has not been as bad as it could have been. In 2016, there was a massive rise in ransomware attacks. They're expecting this year that we see about 25% more new families, right? So Locky, there isn't just one version of Locky. There's 3 or 4 at this point. WannaCry just came out a week ago, and we're already on version 3. And that's a family, okay? They're expecting a 25% increase in families this year alone, right? Over 97% of all phishing emails that are currently in the wild right now are connected to ransomware attacks. It is the loved way to get this in. The way that Locky first hit those German firms when it was initially released, phishing emails. That's why we need to be testing them. That's why we need to be checking, because that's where it's probably going to come from. I mean, and this is brand new, and if you followed WannaCry, you know that it wasn't as bad because a British security researcher actually registered the domain of the command and control server before the bad guys could. He didn't even realize what he was doing. He just saw that listed in the code and went, I want that domain. So he bought it. So the software, the original version of the software, couldn't activate properly on most systems. So he saved a lot of people's skin. But even with that, it spread fairly quickly and made $70,000 in its first weekend. You actually look at the 3 Bitcoin wallets that were attached to that version, $70,000 in payments have been submitted to them over the past week. That's pretty easy money if you know what you're doing. So this isn't going to stop. Now, there is good news. If you have some of the higher end AV products right now, or depending on what you're doing in your environment, they're finally starting to catch up to how ransomware works. So Webroot, they purchased BrightCloud last year. They're integrating all that into their system. They claim it's a proprietary journaling feature that will roll back ransomware attacks automatically. Users report it's hit or miss at this point. Sophos has a version of this called Intercept X that will automatically try to catch and roll back ransomware attacks. Cylance is another vendor out there that's kind of on the bleeding edge for AV products, and they catch them before they start, supposedly. So we're starting to get wise to it from the AV side, but if you're using a traditional antivirus, it's going to fall flat on its face on this one, right? And if that's what we have running in our environment and that's what we can afford, we're going to miss it. We don't have some of the newer stuff. And that's okay. There are some steps you can take to protect yourselves and to monitor for it and to kind of get ahead of it if it hits you, right? As always, with anything in IT, backups is going to save your butt every time, right? 3-2-1 rule of backups, at least 3 backups in 2 places, at least one of them off-site, and test them, because we see a lot of hospitals, universities, places that shouldn't have to pay the criminals when they get hit with ransomware. They're coughing up the cash because they didn't test their backups, and when they needed them, they failed. So make sure you're keeping good backups and you're testing them out. You can also do some things. Emmet can detect some of the earlier versions and block some of the earlier versions of ransomware. If you're running AppLocker in your environment, not 100% guaranteed at this point, but it does seem to be doing fairly well at keeping ransomware from spreading in environments by locking out unknown applications. But that depends on your organization's security policy, where you're at. You got to make those decisions. Again, if you want help with any of these things, feel free to talk to one of us. We'd be happy to, kind of point you to the right resources. You can also do a few things with PowerShell to monitor for certain actions in your environment, right? So we can watch for weird file calls and weird, writings, things like that on our servers. I know a couple of organizations have actually set up sacrificial file shares in their environment. So they have something set up with the bells and whistles that are ready to alarm if they start to see a bunch of files written or overwritten on it, and it's just there as a scapegoat. They got their own little file share honeypot. So anyway, I am going to turn it over now to Mr. Kelly. Why don't you go ahead and take the stage?
All right. Actually, where is the stage?
You're already on it. Welcome to it.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm Kyle Kelly. I'm actually an adjunct instructor for TCC as well for the Cybersecurity Associates course. And we're going to start off with security automation. Sorry guys, I do have notes here, so just bear with me. So for years, IT security professionals have been skeptical when it comes to relying on automation. In truth, humans cannot react fast enough in response to threats. So in this day and age, automation is necessary in any organization due to the growing threats of cybersecurity and the fact malicious cybersecurity activity is becoming automated itself, as you were stating earlier. The point of security automation is to free up overtaxed security resources, allowing security teams to be focused on the mundane tasks and more focused on strategic innovatives that will ensure their organization is more secure. So knowing when and where to apply security automation is key to any organization, obviously. The problem we've seen in organizations is when it comes to a clear definition and application of these security automation measures that comply to the company needs. There are several interpretations and focus for what could be considered cybersecurity controls, and there are a variety of vendors offering different tools to automate almost every aspect of administrative work required by IT security. So I will point out some of the common elements that can be found in these discussions tend to correlate to policy execution, alert monitoring and prioritization, incident response planning, investigation, actions, and remediation. So for policy execution, this is really just going to provide and allow you to gain greater control over data cost and time, and pretty much move away from manually managing associated security policies. The examples that I had provided were to your antivirus solution, being able to capture system alerts and automatically execute policies to prevent any kind of intrusion or spread of the malware. There are intrusion prevention systems out there, solutions that are doing deep packet inspection. They're looking for these signatures. They're trying to basically see the malware as it's coming in, as it's passing through your firewall, based on where your IPS solution is actually placed in your network security. But I mean, as it's actually captured, you can actually configure a lot of these systems to automatically perform tasks for you. They can, if malware is actually truly detected and it's bouncing from host to host, you can drop these hosts off. You can actually kick them off the network, automatically disconnect them. If, say, you found that, I'm trying to come up with an example for you guys for disabled user accounts performing malicious activity. Well, a compromised account, somebody actually VPN into your network and browsing around places that they shouldn't be. Are you truly monitoring all of your user activity? Your service accounts, are you actually monitoring those and making sure that they're only allowed to authenticate in areas that they're supposed to be in? If you are, and there are, like I said, several solutions out there that vendors that actually provide solutions to accommodate that, to provide you that monitoring. Those solutions can be automated to the point that they'll actually disable an account if it is found to be outside of its normal behavior, its normal patterns. Ensuring all network appliance configurations meet regulatory requirements for security policy. So if you guys have certain accreditations that you actually have to meet, there are solutions out there that will allow you to be able to manage and monitor the network appliance configurations, like just exactly how they are configured, making sure they actually meet your base guidelines for securing those devices. You don't actually have to go in and log into each one of those on an individual basis and basically do the compare manually. There are automated solutions out there to actually do that for you. Monitoring and prioritization. So traditional methods or tedious manual tasks that a team of analysts, or just you if you're unlucky, would attempt to compile rules and thresholds to determine importance of alerts. I'm sure we've all done this if you actually have been a systems administrator, network administrator for that matter as well. There are several solutions out there. They're kind of becoming outdated, and they were manual. They were tedious. You actually had to go in if you wanted to. They actually did it all for the most part, but they didn't automate the process in itself. If you did want to monitor if a service was shut down on a server, or if a user account was actually doing something malicious, and from a behavioral aspect, they actually did monitor it to that degree, but you had to go in and manually set that. You had to go in and appropriately assign your alerts. You had to go in and appropriately assign or determine the prioritization of that alert. Of that situation that was actually occurring. There are solutions out there nowadays that this work's already been done. Why reinvent the wheel? There's no point. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your staff's time. Why not look at another solution that is already set up, that people, other teams have already correlated. We've been working on this for years, and there's really no point to kind of circle back around and start over. But so why not use threat intelligence services? Know of an attack before it could potentially happen to you. WannaCry is a really good one. Utilizing these threat intelligence, coming from multiple sources, keeps you on top of stuff, keeps you at the forefront for the most part. If it happened in, where did the WannaCry start off in? You said Germany?
Locky hit in Germany first. WannaCry hit just about everywhere to begin with, but I think it started mostly in Turkey, and the guy who registered the domain was from Britain.
From Britain, that's right. Yeah. That's right. But hey, again, this information is out there. As people are seeing it, it's being posted. This information is actually being spread as fast, almost, well, obviously not as fast as as the threat itself. But for the most part, the awareness is right behind it. and why not keep on top of it? So utilize these threat intelligence solutions. There are solutions out there that actually integrate with this threat intelligence and will prevent an attack from actually occurring if there is a vulnerability in terms of on your network appliance or something of that nature. If it needed to be updated or there was a new vulnerability that was found, it's going to report it to you. It's going to let you know, hey, this is a feed that we got. This needs to be patched, so on and so forth. For implementing advanced behavioral analytics or machine learning technologies, again, that's going a little above and beyond looking at historical information or known issues. Again, that kind of circle back around to analyzing the standards that user accounts, service accounts, certain processes or applications actually operate, and it creates a baseline for monitoring those. And once it has that baseline, anything that is falls outside of that is obviously a concern. And that's where the behavioral analytics or machine learning technology is going to come into play. It's going to actually, you can configure that in your antivirus solution, for instance, that if it falls out of the scope of norm, it's going to trigger it. It's going to say, hey, something's not right here. We're going to terminate this service. We can set it to just alert you, so on and so forth. But the point of this is to automate it. I mean, why get an alert over the weekend on a workstation that you have no physical access to and just let it run? Want to go ahead and be a little more proactive and say, hey, okay, well, if this is definitely outside of the norm, this has been running normal for to a standard degree for an extended period of time, and now it's trying to do something funky that I wasn't aware of and I didn't deploy or set up, why not terminate it? Incident response planning. Track the evolution of security incident and coordinate the actions required to respond. Acknowledge the inevitable. Everybody's going to get a virus. You can't protect them all. You can't block them all. That's, at this point in time, it's almost a common sense. All we can do is really implement what we feel necessary in our corporations, our environments, to try to mitigate these risks the best we possibly can. And so acknowledge the inevitable. Build the right team. Make sure that you have all appropriate qualified parties in play. Your network engineer, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, they may be certified, but have they been keeping up with the times? I mean, are they kind of a little more old school versus this new next generation hardware solution based? I mean, are they familiar with this stuff? Has everybody in the team been keeping up to all these threats that have actually been coming around within? I mean, it's been blowing up over the past 2 years, and it's going to continue. It's just going to get worse. So we just have to keep on top of it. Keep the plan fresh. Well, we were talking about backups earlier. Make sure that you can restore it. I've been in situations in the past where we've had backups, plenty of backups. It's actually stored in an offsite situation. These are actually storage devices that are replicated, and turns out when we try to restore it from the other site, it blew up on us to where we couldn't get to it. It just, you had the backup, the device on site was corrupt. We could not access any of that backup content. So we're like, you know what? No big deal. We got this remote site. We'll go ahead and restore from it. You go to try to restore from it, you can't access any of that backup content. It's there. It's using storage. It's using up all that space, but you physically can't get to it. You gotta test that from every angle, every aspect. So, and just keep that plan fresh. Make sure that you can actually perform what you say you can perform and what you say you can do. Stay the course. So vendors provide services to deploy playbooks for different types of threats. There are certain vendors out there that will help automate workflows for better communication, and just adhere to regulations for topics like privacy notification and establish clear audit trails for you. So if you can, you said right arrow, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, sorry about that. So investigation, action, remediation. With this kind of solution here, there are services out there that can actually simulate the experience and logic of experienced cyber analysts at scale. It's basically virtualizing a cyber security administrator's brain, more or less, and being able to go through those processes and automate those tasks for you. A system security event will automatically execute specific procedures and to extract additional information for being able to manage incident resolution. It'll actually automate the process of communication for you as well, to be able to notify all the parties necessary. And it will actually collect historical information for you. It's a very nice solution in terms of itself. But any questions on that one before I move over to public and private cloud security? I feel like I'm bombing this, so I apologize.
You're doing great.
Yeah? Oh, nice feedback. Thank you very much. Public and private cloud security. Actually had a little blurb on that one too, but really it's just a definition of cloud computing itself, what cloud computing is. Kind of gives you a definition of what the public cloud is. Actually, I'll read those two off for you. So public cloud is based on the standard cloud computing model in which a service provider makes resources such as applications and storage available to the general public over the internet. Private cloud is more known as an internal or enterprise cloud and resides on a company's intranet or hosted data center, is managed by the organization it serves. One of the real concerns with between those two is who's actually managing your data, who's actually securing your data. There are several websites out there, several communication boards out there that kind of give you a little more in-depth detail to that. But for the most part, it's going to be in your contracts. I mean, it's going to be defined in your contracts as to who's covering what. And a lot of these accreditations and certifications that our companies actually have to apply for nowadays may actually restrict which one we can go for, if we can go for them at all. But there are 12 main security threats that have been recently reported. I guess this one actually came out late last year. The topics that I really wanted to cover, and the first one is actually data breaches. And it was talking about the severity of potential damage tends to really depend on the data itself, whether it's PHI, PII, financial information, so on and so forth. But how do these normally occur? For the most part, this past year, or from reports, they were mainly due to relaxing security in regards to passwords. The lack of authentication, weak passwords, and poor key or certificate management. Compromised credentials and broken authentication. This is where people just do not implement multi-factor authentication. In a lot of cases, you'll have people that are sharing passwords that'll take advantage of this as well. Trying to just come up with another example for you guys, I'm sorry, that I've recently experienced in regards to multi-factor authentication. But for the most part, it seems like, oh, well, okay. There was a system not too long ago I was taking a look at, and I was working with another technician who had requested that they had an account created, and the account was created. Next thing you know, they are emailing username and passwords. I was like, why are you emailing these username and passwords? And that is absolutely forbidden. You shouldn't do that. And his response was, well, we've been doing it for years. And it was just one of those things where I'm not sending it in the same email. They're two separate emails. It doesn't matter. I mean, what if that email address, that email account has already been compromised? They absolutely have the username and password. And for this username and password, I'm like, what is it even for? What are they going to be using this service for? Oh, well, they could potentially be posting a PHI or something of that nature. I'm like, what are you thinking? That's crazy. So I was like, well, let me look back at the service here that you're actually trying to set up this account on. And it turns out they don't have any kind of multi-factor authentication whatsoever. And it was really just an administrator goes in, creates an account manually in a database, and they email it off. What's the harm in that, right? If the smarter thing to do in that situation for that particular application would be to pick one of these forms of multi-factor authentication. Possibly, a one-time password would absolutely play a role in this aspect to be able to prevent the loss and exposure of these different passwords. Hacked interfaces or APIs, threat modeling applications and systems, including data flows or architecture design, become important parts of the development life cycle. So security-focused code reviews and rigorous penetration testing. Are all of you guys actually doing any penetration testing in your environment? Do you know if you are or not? Are you actually doing this penetration testing, not necessarily into your environment itself, but on these applications that your developers are actually writing up? Have you tested them to the degree that they need to be tested? Have you actually tried to fuzz all of the inputs and make sure all the metrics are in place to actually protect it? Are you protecting yourself from known vulnerabilities in third-party APIs? Are you keeping those up to date and making sure that they are secure? What's another one there? Well, the architecture and design. For the most part, developers themselves are insecure because they're more concerned on developing an application that works more than developing an application that is secure and locked down. If you go to a developer and you ask them, or they're asking you to deploy this application into a test environment from their development servers, and they want you to make sure that they have all the necessary permissions to be able to test that application. We're like, all right, well, what permission levels do you need? And a lot of cases are like, oh, well, whatever so-and-so has, which is SA. In SQL, they have local administrative rights on the server, and you're giving these rights, full rights to these folks or service accounts or whatever on these applications that don't need that. So the developers just aren't concentrated on the level of security that is necessary. And so we, as IT security folks, have to take part of that and kind of restructure it and rehash through those and try to figure out what the minimum level is for these applications or services to be able to work and operate in our design for the most part. But if they're not thinking about it there, how do we know whether or not they're thinking about it when they're actually developing these apps, when they're designing, when they're architecturing it, where these services are being used, which holes actually, which ports are talking through, are they secured, are they actually encrypting any of this data when it's hopping from server to server? Because you also have to worry about that as well. I mean, we're always worried about perimeter from security. What about internal? I mean, what about all this data that's actually traveling internal? What about your backup solution that's replicating from point A to point B? That's actually maybe going over an MPLS, site-to-site VPN, or something of that nature. For the most part, that data over the site-to-site VPN or PLS is private. The site-to-site actually those packets are encrypted, but internally, as it's hopping from between switches, it's all unencrypted. So I mean, are we actually encrypting our backup data for the most part? I don't know why I jumped off into that. Sorry about that. Tangent. Exploited system vulnerabilities. So provide regular vulnerability scanning, prompt patch management, and quick follow-up. Actually, the WannaCry was a pure example right there for prompt patch management. I mean, Windows obviously had this SMB issue that has been around for a number of years. They just recently patched it, and then have we all kept up to date on those patches? A lot of us are still running XP, Vista, 2008, 2003, 2003 R2. None of those are supported anymore. We're not receiving any more Windows updates on a lot of cases for those. Windows 7 is really on its way out, but I mean, a lot of state agencies, they'll have their extensions or whatever base if they have the enterprise level license for it, but we're just continuing to use it. We're not actually updating. We're not actually taking the effort to patch those or migrate those up to an actual supported operating system so that to keep those secure. And as a result, now we have WannaCry splashing around over the internet, and we're sitting ducks. I mean, we're vulnerable. I mean, all it takes is for one person to get in. These are worms. They're hopping around. Account hijacking. Again, that was just referring to sharing of account credentials. So in order to kind of prevent that, well, the sharing of account credentials is really going to be training. That's what that's going to be based off of. But to help prevent account hijacking is providing multi-factor authentication, implementing it into your applications that your developers are creating, and to be able to monitor service account activity. Malicious insider. Segregate your duties, minimize given access, provide activity monitoring. In a lot of situations, these private industries out there, they're very small. Even state agencies or IT groups, very small. And how do you do the segregation of duties? How do you actually separate those roles? In a lot of cases, we can't. And we're actually forced to give people a lot more privileges and permissions than they really truly should have. And it's our effort, or we need to make an effort, all companies and businesses need to make an effort to actually try to figure out ways to segregate that for the guy that actually is creating these the certificates and keys for backups, to being able to not have the ability to also be able to restore, or encrypt or decrypt that backup data, assign it to somebody else. In a lot of situations, again, is really based on resources available on your team. But keep it in mind, because all it takes is that one malicious insider, and they've got you. Advanced persistent threats, parasite. Train users to recognize phishing attempts. We can go on that all day long on the phishing attempts. Provide yourself anti-malware solutions, or integrate anti-malware solutions, and device management solutions. A lot of these anti-malware solutions nowadays actually do device control, where they'll block USBs, they'll block being able to switch, or have your LAN and WAN run at the same time, where you actually have dual internet connections or network connections, and be able to traverse between the two. There are devices out there, rubber duckies, land turtles. That's some of the stuff that we actually get the students to get a little hands-on with in the course. And what are those devices actually coming up as? When you plug those devices in, rubber ducky is coming up as a generic keyboard. It's going to come up, no keyboard is ever blocked from any device. All right, there are solutions out there that have taken this into account and are trying to actually mitigate these from a device control perspective. Take a look at those. Look out there, search. It may be a solution that you already have in place that just requires a slight update or version update. Keep up to date on your versions of solutions that you have out there. Just be aware of it. Permanent data loss. Again, this is kind of back to the backup measures and making sure that you actually have adequate backups. Make sure that you can actually restore from those backups. We've all been in a lot of situations, I'm sure, that have experienced some devastation from that to one degree or another. But an example is if this is regarding the public cloud security, but if a customer actually encrypts data before uploading it to the cloud, and then it's actually just protected in the cloud per se, but then if that encryption key is lost, their data is lost. They can't access it because you, as the public infrastructure, don't have access to be able to decrypt their data. One of the things I actually will note on private cloud security for the permanent data loss is in certain circumstances with the private cloud, there are solutions out there that actually will provide you SAN storage or data storage on a SAN infrastructure in this private cloud. And there are accreditations that actually require you to have your actual private key to actually do remote key management for that content in the event that it has to be encrypted. And what a lot of private cloud services will actually provide is to allow you to create that private key. It is your job to retain it and keep it in the event that something does happen and they have to do restore or anything of that nature. You're actually held responsible for it. They'll maintain the storage for the most part, but you're responsible for being able to re-access that data. Inadequate diligence, obviously, do due diligence. Make sure that everything's up to date. Make sure that all the solutions that you have that are scanning your network, all of these automated services, make sure that they're up to date. Do your due diligence. Read the logs. There's a lot of information in logs out there that people are just overlooking. Cloud service abuse. Providers need to recognize topics of abuse, such as scrutinizing traffic to recognize DDoS attacks, and offer tools to customers to monitor the health of their cloud environment. Customers should also make sure providers offer such measures and reporting or mechanisms. So DOS attacks. They're obviously very common. Both the public and the private security or cloud infrastructures are susceptible to DOS attacks. I mean, we all are. So just be aware of that. And both public and private cloud infrastructures, based on the way that the private cloud infrastructure is actually designed and developed, they're all on shared technology, and there are shared dangers between them. So a single vulnerability or misconfiguration can absolutely lead to a compromise across an entire provider's cloud. I really like that quote, and I just wanted to interject that. But any questions for me on that one? No? Okay, thanks. I really bombed that. I appreciate that.
So we'll go ahead and turn the floor over to Chris here. Just to sell the program for a second, because I feel like if I don't sell it, I don't get paid. Chris is in our first cohort. He did not have a job in IT before starting our program. He has been able to successfully land himself into the field since then, and he's doing really well. I'm very concerned because I'm afraid he's going to be competition for me soon. So,
I promise I won't take as long as Kyle, by the way. So should be easy and quick. First off, we're going to go over the Internet of Things. This is a big threat recently. We've all heard about the DIN attack, which took off pretty much half of the internet for the Northeast corridor. So let's get started on the Internet of Things. As you can see, it's home routers that are being hacked, IP cameras, DVRs, smart TVs, thermostats, and anything in this picture. You know, it's funny, but at the same time, it's actually a concern because that is the route where we are going. So, yeah, we got to make sure those devices are secure, especially because everyone's going to have a smart fridge eventually. Hopefully, it won't lock us out. This is the Merari botnet. It's one of the bigger ones. It's over 200,000 strong. You can kind of see through. There's a map up there where all these devices are located, and it's thousands everywhere. And this is just going to be a growing problem unless it actually is addressed, because people are starting to get technology in their home more and more. So that'll grow. And why it's so easy? Because of passwords and logins. Please change them if you have any of these devices. As you can see, one of the passwords and username is admin123456. So these programmers are able to take dumps like this with passwords and logins, and they can put in their program, and then that'll just brute force your device. So that's how they enslave these devices into their botnet. Once again, here's the DIN attack. This was level 3, one of the backbone providers for internet, and that was what Merari did to the internet pretty much. That was the outage that they had.
If you want to experience it, go get a couple of dollars.
We also had, this is a different one, the IoT devices. They're not only used now for DDoS attacks, they're actually used for spam as well. This one alone has 5 million infected, with nearly 5 million infected bots. So if you can imagine pushing spam through 5 million devices, you can spam a lot of users with a lot of spam. And that goes back to, please train your users and test them, because if you're not testing them, I guarantee you there's 5 million devices that will love to do it. So what can you do? Change the default logins. Please don't use admin. Don't use default passwords. If it doesn't need to be connected to the internet, disable it. Yes, it might be easy to have connected to the internet, but do you really need it, and is it worth that threat? You can also go on this website. if you just do IoT search, you can go to the website. They'll tell you if there's known vulnerabilities in the product before you purchase it. So if you're thinking about getting a Nest device to control your AC at home, go ahead and check it out. See if it is a threat or not before you put it in your home or at your office or whatever. Know the threats that exist before you purchase them. And also, you can scan your network at home. I personally, I use Nessus. They have a home edition you can get for free. Scan your home network. They do Industry 2 as well if you don't have a scanner. And then also Retina has an Internet of Things scanner that you can use. You can download that if you have a bunch of Internet of Things devices connected on your network. I'm also talking about mobile device management today and controlling that. Some things to consider: your lock screen. We'll dive into each one of these points a little bit more in depth. This is just a brief overview. Have approved antivirus on it. iPhone, it's kind of a pain because they don't really let you put antivirus on iPhones. Hopefully that will change eventually because those threats are coming up. Have encryption at rest. Most devices offer it as long as you're using a good lock screen. Also, train your users on public Wi-Fi and VPN connection. Also, you need to be able to remotely delete devices. If a device has critical data on it that is important to your company or has private information that you need to keep private, be able to remotely delete that. And also control access to your network using certificates, because these certificates are a great way of doing it because you can revoke them. This is just why is it a growing threat. You can see by the graphs here that it's jumping, and it's only going to jump more and more and more as these, as almost script kids nowadays, 16-year-olds playing in their room or whatever, can get their hands on stuff and start forking it off onto their own. So these threats are just going to grow, especially for mobile. Everyone's using the mobile device. I think the average person checks their mobile device like every 2 minutes or something like that a day. So when you come in with your lock device, it's this layer protection. If you have it, some people implement single sign-on where once the device opens, they're able to get into the network. You can do that if you'd like, but I would recommend use a different PIN or password. If you have a password to unlock your phone, don't use that password again to VPN into the network. Have different ones. So if one password's owned, then the other one's not. Also, think of the strength of the PIN or password. Maybe you need 6 pins instead of 4 for an iPhone, or maybe you shouldn't allow pins at all for the phone unlock, or the device, whatever it is, a tablet may be it. Maybe you need an actual password to do that, depending on how sensitive the data is on there. It's easy to get into an iPhone. If you're the U.S. government, apparently you can spend $1 million to do it. I don't know too many hackers who have that type of resource, but it can be done. Just make it harder on people. Also, remote access to device. I don't know why I put that on lock device, but we'll talk about that later. Because you should have access, just be able to find it. Where is it? You can use Find My iPhone, Lockout, and Avast have similar solutions to be able to find it. Did you reorder my slides?
I copied them regularly.
This just touches again on the growing threat. As you can see, it grew from 6 million apps analyzed to 10 million apps. So there's more apps out there, and the percentage-wise is growing. Out of those 10 million, about 30% were classified as malware. So that goes into our next stuff later on. You can also get management solutions if you have a BYOD, or bring your own device. This is a VMware solution. What it does is it kind of contains your stuff from the user stuff. So that makes management easier, so that doesn't get into, or if you have to delete stuff off of there, you're just deleting your stuff, you're not deleting their picture with their grandma, and they'll be really upset if that happens, because they're not going to get that back once you delete it. Antivirus, make sure it's proactively monitoring. We want something that catches it on the way in, not after it's been sitting there for a week or two. So have all your new applications scanned as they're coming in. Have a policy to keep your antivirus up to date. And also require a full scan once you install it. get that stuff installed, immediately run a scan. And then make sure your antivirus supports, if you can get it, behavioral detection. I've had instances before where we've migrated from non-behavioral based and then we went behavioral based, and you'd be surprised how many more you start picking up with that. Encryption's a big one. Encryption at rest on the device. Corporate Wi-Fi that you're using to connect to, please use WPA2 Enterprise if you can do it. Don't use WIP setup. Please don't use that. It's easily crackable. VPNs, check your VPN strength. Make sure you're using AES. Make sure you're using SHA. And we'll get more too into the key exchange. So for symmetric key exchanges, it uses one for encryption and one for decryption. You have different types. You have DAS, triple DAS, blowfish, and AES. I put a star by AES because you should be using that one. That is what the government considers safe. The NSA is probably using something else by now, but they say that's the one they support, which they can probably crack, but your average hacker doesn't have the resources yet. Asymmetric, you have a public key that encrypts and then another private key for decryption. Pretty much it's just two keys now. So it's more secure because you don't have one key, you now have two keys. It's a little slower, but I would definitely, there's different algorithms that are used, but please use RSA or ECC. EEC, because of the mathematics behind it, you're actually able to do a smaller number of bits to encrypt it, but it's going to be faster because of the algorithm. It's a little bit more complex. It uses curves and stuff. I'm not a mathematician, so I won't get into that, but it's a good one if you can use it. Also, you get simpler key management because certain times with public keys, you can go ahead and revoke them. That leads us into a public key infrastructure, PKI. You're probably using it already. What you don't know is that when you see that HTTPS, you're on a secure connection. So you're using public key infrastructure. That's how you can tell that something's secure, is because that hasn't been revoked. So please set up PKI if you can to help manage your devices that are coming in. Another way is IPsec is another VPN in, and all I really want to touch on here is this is a big one that people use with Cisco AnyConnect. Make sure you're using IKV2. IKV1 is pretty much done with. So go ahead, if you have IPsec on anything, go back and check it. Make sure you're using 2 and see if you're not, if you can migrate up to it. Oh, and one more thing too. If you ever see TLS, make sure you have that and disable SSL. SSL is old, outdated. Some people are still using it. Please upgrade to TLS. And if I ever say SSL, just assume it's TLS because we're old school in the tech industry, I guess, and once we get set on calling one thing one way, that's how it's going to be, even though now it's TLS. So whenever you think SSL, immediately just jump to TLS. With foreign networks, this is becoming a threat because it's really easy to set up. They actually have Wi-Fi pineapples and other things. You can just get an at-home old router to set up a foreign network. I like this little one about the free man-in-the-middle attack for everyone now at Starbucks. This is why we need to train our users. Make sure that they know that there is a threat out there, that just because it says free Wi-Fi, it's not a great thing. So we need to be able to spot it, hopefully with our end users, and immediately use VPN connections over to encrypt the data. With remote wipe, the company has control to delete the company data remotely. Excuse me. Have a policy for timely reporting. If the device is lost or stolen, have a policy for that, whether it be hours or a day. But you know, someone shouldn't go on vacation and come back to the office and say, hey, I lost my phone a week ago. That's unacceptable when you have secure data. Full device, this goes back to the VM stuff. Do you want a full device deletion, or do you have segregated data deletion? You need to look into that. And also the implications of deleting data. Once again, you know, deleting the picture with grandma who might have passed away. Now all of a sudden you have legal issues that if you didn't address, you can be liable for money. And we don't like that when money starts getting on there, then our boards start coming down on us. Also, possible mandates. Sometimes people don't think about this, But if you work in an industry that has competitive advantages and things, you might want to mandate a full deletion for a user's device, even their personal device, if they are a C-level suite executive or just a really good developer or something like that, just because you don't want trade secrets going out or contacts. Some more things to consider: no rooted devices, no untrusted apps from the app stores or from a whitelist that you've implemented, no peer-to-peer like BitTorrent. Screenshots, a lot of these new solutions, they'll actually let you geofence to where the camera will be inoperable in some places. So if you work at a hospital, maybe outside at home it works, but then when you come to the hospital, they're not going to let you take pictures of the patients. The camera won't work. Go ahead, turn off unused services. Bluetooth, there's blue snarfing and blue jacking. A lot of people don't know that Bluetooth is a vulnerability in itself. Newer versions address some of the stuff, but still, if you don't use it, disable it. Go ahead and tighten your security threats. Just eliminate threats. Make sure the device is up to date, whether that be by staff audits or whatever, or from mobile device management. Make sure that they stay up to date, and the apps within there. Also have device backups if needed. And with that, I'm finished, and Andreas is up.
Hi everybody. It's a bit overwhelming, huh? Kind of like your belt line in January after the holidays. You can't quite put your finger on why it doesn't fit, but you got a problem, you gotta deal with it. Gentlemen, stay, please. Join us. We need problem solvers for this next part, I promise. What are we gonna do about it? Okay, so I used to be in theater, so I like to be in the front of the stage. So I'm just gonna come up here and you'll see me walk back every now and then and tap the screen. I actually have a story to tell you, and I need your help. This is really a call to action, and it's a true story. So it starts with me standing in front of my boss and asking me this question. Well, what are we going to do about it? Now, as you can probably guess, because we're sitting in a cybersecurity forum, the question had to do with what we were going to do about cybersecurity. We had stood up a new security function. We had a small team, and if you've never been in that situation, it's very hard to go and stand in front of your boss and say, boss, we've outlined all of these great things. I have a portfolio of projects. I have an estimate of how many hours it's going to take. I know the challenges. I know the risks. We don't have enough people. Because what are you trying to tell your boss? You need more people, right? And your boss says, okay, what are we going to do about it? So, I'm going to set up the story a little bit. Here are the characters. I think we all know pretty much who's involved. We have the bad guys, right? You guys have been overwhelmed in the last week, probably today, with information about what hackers are, where they are, how pervasive they are, how nasty they are. What you probably don't know is that if they're in their networks, you probably don't know it until way, way later. So if January 1st someone hacked into your network, you're not going to know about it until the middle of August, on average. Talk about giving someone resources and time to develop a plan to do whatever they want. So that's the bad guys. They're there, we know it, and they're hanging out. Next, you have the employees. So this is a bit of an eye graph, but if you read up here what it's saying, the people in charge of security on networks believe that the problem most often is the employees. Now everyone here up here has touched on it. Employees like emails, right? They like to click on the links. If you start looking at the psychology of malware, they're doing studies to figure out how to compel somebody with colors, with formatting, with interaction, with follow-ups. 50% of first attempt phishing fails. 90% of second time follow-up phishing succeeds. Right? They figured out how to make it work. Employees are part of the culture that interacts with these resources. We've got to get a handle on that. The technologies. If you are here, you're involved in technology. If you run a company and you have a director of IT, or maybe you run the IT, you've probably seen a graph like this. Not everything up there means something to me, and I work in the industry, so I can only imagine that if you run a business, this would make your head hurt. And to give you some perspective, every big circle on there is the scale of the risk, and the color means how risky it actually is. So you got a lot of big red circles up there. A lot of risk involved with trying to secure our environments. And the last part, the last players in this story are the employees. Can you do it one more time? This is a report local to Tallahassee of what the IT workforce looks like. You see that big blue section circled there in the middle? We essentially don't have a cybersecurity workforce. We have people like us who, I came from administration, these guys came from system administration, from education, outside the technology industry. We just happened to end up in security because something compelled us to get involved, right? But there's nobody in the industry, and these are self-identified numbers, who identifies themselves as a cybersecurity professional looking for work, right? So those are the characters. The conflict, right? Every good story has some conflict. We talked about it, IoT, right? Computers started back in the 70s. They were gigantic rooms. They didn't scale well. Not everybody could get their hands on them. It took us 25 years to get to 10 billion devices. 10 billion is a lot. There are only, 4 billion people on the planet, right? It's going to take us 5 more years to get to 30 billion. I want you guys to think about that. We're going to compress the amount of growth that we experienced in the first quarter century 3 times in the next 5 years. All right, so that's the conflict. Provided to us by Gartner. So a little play on the psychology of cybersecurity. If you're in the IoT, this could really apply to any part of IoT or any part of IT, right? You kind of go through that phase where cybersecurity doesn't apply to me. You know, they're going after big companies. They're going after medical data. I'm not in medical. They're going after legal data. I'm not in legal. They're going after the military, or, you know, that's not me. That's not me. Then we have an event like this past weekend where they touched on it already. The attack was so pervasive that it made global news. Corporations all around the world stop everything that they were doing in operations to focus on dealing with this. And the really scary part about that is the malware was poorly written and the execution of the delivery was poorly executed. That could have been 10 times worse than it ended up being. All right? So we have the conflict. So what do? You go through, I'm standing in front of my boss, he tells me, what are we going to do about it? I say, boss, I'm going to figure it out for you because, you know, I like you, I like working for you, you're a good guy, I want to stay here. So I go and I identify the fact that we have all these technologies, we're going to organize them. We're going to put them into categories. We're going to get subject matter experts. We're going to put people in places to do specific things, and they're going to become the best at that thing that we can possibly do. Right? So we're going to put people in places. This is great. Now scale this, because everyone's working in their own security lane. If you own a business, you run a business, you have IT in your business, you know that your app people sometimes have no idea what the network people are doing. Should they? That's a different conversation, but it's a very typical scenario. So what happens when you start adding these people in? They operate in silos, you have to slow things down to make sure everyone's on the same page. But more importantly, what does all this do? Go ahead.
That's a good question. Wait, there, go ahead.
Money. Money and time. Right? So I came back with this plan, and I put it in front of my boss, and he says, okay, we'll do that. So we got some false hope, right? We have a solution. We're going to move forward. We're going to solve this problem. My chart of workforce demand now does not read 200% for the next 18 months, right? It's a good thing, but it's not sustainable because things don't stay the same, because we're scaling at 10 times the pace we've scaled in the last 25 years. 85% of IT device management is going to be automated. What does that mean for our workforce? We've got to get them engaged to understand the problems of the business. So here's the realization. And unfortunately, this is not one of those Disney stories that has a happily ever after, right? The realization is, if you've gone out there and priced cybersecurity people, they're expensive. There are going to be 1 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs in the world by 2020. And they know it. And they're expensive. right? This comes straight from Gartner. Okay, so they're expensive. And
Did I not go? I'm sorry.
it takes forever to find a good one, or the right one, the one who gets your business, understands your model, understands what you're trying to accomplish, fits into your culture. 130 days. How long are the attackers in your network? 266 days? So now you know you have a problem. You know you have a problem. So you're going to add another 130 days on top of that to find somebody to deal with it? That's a year. A year where you have a problem. You know, it's like your belts in January. How long does it take you to deal with that after the holidays? About a year, right? So this is the realization. And the other part is, keep going. One more time. They're not out there. Here in Tallahassee, we are not creating a pipeline. We're not creating a pool. We have smart people. One of the top college towns in the country. We've got 3 great institutions. And I'll put TCC at the top of them because I've gone out there and I've talked, and what TCC is doing is they're building a program that gives their students day one value to organizations. They can walk in day one, tell you what your problems are, tell you how to solve them, help you put together a plan to deal with it. But right now, the number of candidates doesn't even come close to filling the demand that we have in Tallahassee. So the future. So in our program, some of the things that we're teaching our students are technology is important. You got to take the next step. There are predictions out there that cybersecurity spending is going to continue to grow at this double-digit pace infinitely. Well, that's what they said about the housing market 10 years ago. It's not possible. Money has to come from somewhere. Resources have to come from somewhere. It means we have to get our technology people to be well-rounded, to understand the business. So these are some of the things that we're teaching our students in our classes. We're giving them 5 key skills. One more time. Right? There is a lot of technology out there. Some of the stuff these guys are talking about, I'd never even heard of, and I've been in the industry 15 years. You will go to a cybersecurity professional in an organization, and they will tell you something that you don't know. You're never going to know it all. We tell our students the only way to completely secure a system is to unplug it. Unplug it from the network, turn it off. Then it's completely secure. Nobody's going to hack it. I promise. So we're teaching our students to evangelize, to consult, to broker, to coach, and to deliver. So I went and found all this out, and I'm standing there in front of my boss, and I'm saying, "Boss, we got a problem. This is what we need to do. We can't keep going out and consulting people in at these rates. We need to scale our business." Luckily enough for me, I just found out about the program here. Do it one more time. Mm-hmm. So I started working with Jessica and this team here. And we started putting together a coalition. And this is where we need your help. And we're not calling these organizations partners, but they understand the problem too. Right? The company's involved. They're selling a product that's in demand, but guess what? They don't have a workforce that can go into the organizations and deliver it. The organizations, the agencies here, they know that they need cybersecurity to protect our government functions, but they can't afford cybersecurity professionals at those consulting rates indefinitely. We have professional organizations here in Tallahassee that can help develop professionals to deliver all the things we've talked about. And we're starting to have some of these conversations. We were talking with the chief technology officer at DOT about setting up a internship program so we can have a pipeline of people to go in to that organization with cybersecurity skills. We're working with tech systems because they're feeding us the data. Are we the same as all the other places? Are we an anomaly? We're working with Forescout, CyberArk, Palo Alto, Sophos, some of the other organizations that these gentlemen work with. Because we want to bring them in. We got to create value out of the program. So ultimately, the question is, and I don't have an answer for it, but the question is, what are we going to do about it? We have a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of people who are passionate and invested and want to create an environment where we can grow our cybersecurity workforce here in Tallahassee. But we need help. We need organizations who want to partner with us. Give us the opportunity to let us come into your networks and do some type of assessment. Possibly offer some type of internship. If you know technology partners, send them our way. We were just talking before the conference. It's hard for us to get people to come into our class at 6 p.m. in the evening and spend time with us. Right? We're a small college. We don't have a large reach. But if you know of anybody, please let us know. The question is not for the college to figure out. It's not for industry to figure out. It's not for you guys to figure out. It's for all of us to come together and work together and come up with a common solution. I hope you guys get involved. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, I know we ran a little long. By that I mean we ran a lot long. I thank you guys for staying with us. We're going to open the floor because they haven't kicked us out yet. If you guys have any questions, anything you'd like to chat about, come on down to the front row. We'll be sitting here for a little bit. We'll be happy to chat. So, yeah, come on and join us.
Somebody's got a question. One of our students has a question, I'm sure.
Yeah, I see people.
Anybody for extra credit even? Right, Joe? Right, Joe? Extra credit?
Yes, sir.
And if you like my pretty graphics at the start, come down and get a flyer with them on. I don't bite, I promise.